welcome. Today we're going to speak a little bit, a story of all things books. I'm Heather Marie Montilla. I'm the National Director of PBS Books.
And I am Karen LeBlanc. I'm the co-anchor of Louisiana, the state we're in. That is our half-hour news magazine that airs on Fridays at 7 on all PBS stations across Louisiana.
So I always like to begin by asking my audience, how many people are PBS watchers? Yay! That is what I like to see. If you're not a PBS watcher, then I bet you are probably a curious person. And if you are a PBS watcher, you are definitely a curious person. So we're so excited to have you all here. I thought we would start a little bit with you getting to know us. And so I'm going to ask you some questions.
Ooh, I get to be interviewed. Talk about role reversal. Okay, bring it on.
So can you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you ended up here?
Yeah, well, I'm born and raised in Baton Rouge, so I'm a Louisiana girl through and through. Went to LSU, graduated from LSU, went to what is now ULM for my master's, started out in journalism here, so I have deep, deep, deep roots here.
Well, I am an unsuspecting person, I guess, in this, because I grew up not really liking to read. I was a terrible reader. I love numbers. Numbers were my safe space. And people actually assume, because I'm the head of PBS Books, that I've always been an avid reader my whole life. And one of the things, and why I'm so excited with what we do with PBS Books, is that I help in the work I do, and PBS stations across the country who share the content and the work they do, help people to know about other authors and writers throughout history. And that visibility gives people the opportunity to find different meeting points and to be able to delve into exciting material. So I'm a librarian, but I wasn't always a librarian. I'm an arts and culture girl, and I lived in New York City for almost 20 years. Then I moved to the Midwest, and before I moved to the Midwest, I fell in love with libraries and how libraries provide access to everyone, information and access, and if we get really theoretical, it is the cornerstone of democracy. One last thing before we move on and talk a little bit more about LPB, which is the Center for the Book is who puts this on. And in case you don't know, this is put on by the Louisiana Center for the Book. Do you guys know what the Louisiana Center for the Book is, where it's really from? The Library of Congress. And that's what's amazing, is that the Library of Congress is involved with a dotted line to the work we do here. And when we sometimes think of the Library of Congress, we think of an ivory tower, but that's not what they want. They want to be the library for everyone, and how they do that is through the good work of the Louisiana Center for the Book and all other centers for the book.
The Louisiana Center for the Book is actually celebrating its 30th year this year. 30 years working with the community. It really is. And making all the information of the Library of Congress accessible to people. It's just great work that they do.
Well, and I love libraries. Does everyone love their local library? Yes, of course you do. Okay, so what do you love most about your job?
I am a curious person, and I love people. So every day for me is an adventure. I get out in the world, I meet fascinating people doing amazing things, and I just feel like I am living a very large life, and I'm just richer for it. Just being able to get out there and connect and engage with people. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone does, and I'm so honored and privileged to be able to tell those stories. And I'm an art and culture nerd, and I love the fact that our news magazine focuses on not only public affairs and current events, but also we do prioritize art and culture and Louisiana's very rich literary scene.
Do you have a favorite book?
Okay, that's a tough one. Oh my goodness. I have a favorite genre.
Okay.
It's magical realism. And I love Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Isabel Allende. I just, the way they spin stories with customs and culture, ancestral legends and folklore, and the these themes of love and aging, and it's just beautiful. So I guess I have favorite authors. Love in the Time of Cholera. I mean, that's a big one, but yeah. How about you?
Well, for me, what I love about my job is, for those of you who don't know, I get to interview authors all the time. And that for me is incredible because, like you, I'm a curious person and I love to learn. And who better to learn from than storytellers? And storytellers, like, I do all genres. Kids, YA, non-fic, historical fic, horror, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a real treat, right, for me to be able to talk to these extraordinary people. Now, I will also say that this work really evolved during the pandemic.
Right.
Because we were trying to serve libraries and PBS stations to give them ways to connect with their community on the very ground level through libraries sharing the content I was creating. When it comes to my favorite genre, it would be historical fiction, hands down, because I'm curious and I always want to learn. So Finding Margaret Fuller, has anyone seen that? That, or read that? That book was written by Alison Pataki, and so Margaret Fuller, transcendentalist, anyone know what that is? Let's go back to the early 1800s, 1810 to 1850. Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, all of these names that if you're over 40, you probably had to read in school. And what was so cool is I learned about this woman named Margaret Fuller, who was a trailblazer. And why we don't know about her is she was the first, talk about journalism, foreign correspondent, and went to Rome in I think it was like the late 1840s to write about the Italian Revolution that was going on. On her way back, she had her big old manuscript. I don't know how many of you know New York, but there's a place called Fire Island. It's on Long Island. Her boat sank, and her manuscript went to the wayside, and she died.
Wow.
And that's why we don't know, but that's the thing. That is what's transformational about books, is you learn about people who you never even thought existed.
And the work that National PBS Books does in this space, connecting people to programming and to the literature,
Yes.
the masterpiece theater work, the author interviews, the filmmaker interviews, all that makes books come alive
Yes.
and accessible from different pathways. So let's talk a little bit about that. For those that are not familiar with National PBS Books, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, we can do that, but let's talk about LPB first.
Oh, I would love to.
Can we? Because I know I am in LPB stomping grounds, and you do amazing work
Thank
in
you.
the literary space.
We do.
So, tell me.
Well, Louisiana, as I said, is such fertile ground for literary greats, and we have a lot of literary programming to honor that. We have author biographies, we have Louisiana legends, several of which throughout our history have been notable authors. I think there's some of our program. There's our Louisiana legends. You can see some of the famous authors that have been honored over the years. And by the way, you can watch these interviews on our websites and on lpb.org and on Passport and our digital archive website as well. So we've got legends. We also have original programs that are based on books. So you can see right here, we've got some of those, Tefla Houseboat. One of the books that we just released is based on a multi-part documentary called Why Louisiana Ain't Mississippi by Jay Darden. And in fact, he's here at the festival.
Wow.
He did a panel earlier today, and I believe he's signing the book. Again, multi-part documentary, which I encourage all of you to watch. You're going to learn so much about our state. It's so well done. So lots of programming in that space, and then we continue to do this because Louisiana, this day we're in, being a half-hour news magazine, part of our mission is to cover art and culture, and within that scope, we do also feature stories on notable authors. And speaking of one, we have Walter Isaacson.
We do have Walter
A
Isaacson.
Louisiana boy, and there is a big program coming out.
Yeah.
connected to.
So we're going to jump ahead a little bit and share a little bit that who knows Walter Isaacson. He writes so many amazing biographies. But maybe what you don't know is that Ken Burns, Sarah Burns, and David McMahon, Florentine Films, is producing or is coming out with a new documentary called Leonardo da Vinci. It comes out on November 18th and 19th. And this is extraordinary because it's the first non-American subject matter that Ken Burns has ever done. Do you know that that documentary was inspired by Walter Isaacson? So in fact, Walter Isaacson, when he was doing the work on his book, Leonardo, he was at a dinner with Ken and he said, Ken, how about you do a film on this? And Ken was like, And a handful of years later, here we are, which is pretty extraordinary.
It really is. And doesn't it premiere November, what?
18th and 19th.
18th and 19th. Stay tuned. You can watch it on LPB.
And it's really a wonderful film. I've seen it. Have you?
I have not, no.
You'll enjoy it.
You interviewed Walter. You have an author interview
right.
coming up.
So this is what's so neat. Let's say, has anyone read Walter Isaacson's Leonardo? Oh.
Yeah?
So PBS Books has a readers club. And every month we designate a book for us all to read together across the country. And what's so neat is for the month of November, we picked Leonardo da Vinci. And so we'll be reading it together. It launched, the book pick launched last week. And you'll see posts about it throughout the month. And then at the end, this month it's a little earlier. It's usually the last Wednesday of every month is when it premieres, but because of Thanksgiving, folks, we moved it to November 20th. So November 20th is when the conversation will premiere, and you'll get to listen to Walter Isaacson and me and 3 other co-hosts talking to Walter, and it's a great conversation. We did do it already. We taped it, but he is so humble and brilliant and clearly loves, he loves Leonardo da Vinci. His passion for how extraordinary Leonardo is just kind of is effervescent.
So that, the author interviews tied to the programming is just part of what you do to engage people with reading. There's so much more that you do that's fascinating work. Tell us a little bit about the Readers Club and how that works.
Yeah, so give me a second. Mm-hmm. So I think the best way to sometimes share information is by showing you. So this is my book club, the people that I get to hang out with when we interview authors. And if you see that stack of books, those are the books we read this year in the book club. Now, in addition, I interview authors on other topics that relate to PBS programming, and we'll go back to that in a second. But here you have everything from Horse with Geraldine Brooks to, I don't know about you, but I love Henry Louis Gates. So to be able to talk to him about the Black Church and his new book, The Black Box, was extraordinary. And then James is an all-time favorite. Has anyone read Percival Everett's James? Because it is my favorite book of the year, and it is based on Huck Finn, and he said that he read The Adventures of Huck Finn 15 times before he started writing, which is pretty neat. He also talks a lot about, in that interview, what his inspiration was, and he said he got his inspiration. Where do you think a professor, a writer, an accomplished, where do you think he got his inspiration? Where do you think he was? He was on the tennis court. He said he hit a ball, and all of a sudden he thought, oh my gosh, has anyone ever written Huck Finn from the perspective of enslaved James? Oh. He also said his best thinking he does is when he's fly fishing.
It's so interesting when you speak to writers about their muse.
Yes.
Their aha moments of inspiration.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm going to play a quick, just so you get an idea. This is my co-host.
Join the PBS Books Readers Club Wednesday, January 31st, as we sit down with Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Geraldine Brooks to discuss her best-selling novel, Horse.
and meet executive producer of the hit PBS series All Creatures Great and Small, Jamie Crichton, and try to get him to spill the tea on what's in store for our beloved characters, so don't miss it.
Visit pbsbooks.org/Readers Club for more.
Well, I was just going to point out too, in addition to the website, you have a strong social media presence that people can connect with.
Totally. We are trying to post every day something book related. We also have PBS Books current affairs and arts, but really I'm about organizing, hey, maybe you don't know what book picks to read that month. If you think of the various heritage months, I'm often recommending to go along with that. But it might surprise you when. Sometimes it's because Hispanic Heritage Month is done, but you should not stop reading amazing Latinx authors, right? So I'll give you some more to read.
Like the classic librarian you are. No, but also you do these Facebook Live events as well that a lot of people tune into. It's becoming a thing.
It is definitely becoming a thing. And I want to share a little bit. So here's the diversity of some of the books, if you can see, that we've highlighted in about the last year. Amina was here talking a few moments ago. You have Lisa Coe. That book is about friends who reconnect, and so it's moving through time. Ada Limon was the U.S. Poet Laureate, the first Latina U.S. Poet Laureate. And that book is amazing because it is a compilation of other poets throughout the country, a real celebration of poetry and nature. And it came out in April, which was also Earth Month. And then We Dream a World was written actually by a 14-year-old young woman. She is the granddaughter of Martin Luther King Jr. And her and an illustrator who I've known for years, Nicole Tadgill, came on, and it was the first time they had actually met in person. Something else we do that's really fun and neat is, because I know, going back to, I didn't read because I couldn't find something I like. And we recognize that's an issue for people. So we partner with the American Library Association's book list. And we often do programs with book lists to recommend different books that they see, because they're doing so much work in the book space and they have lots of editors. So I invite their editors on to talk about the next big read that you should be reading. I'm gonna just give you a little sampling at least to see.
While you're doing that, I have a personal question. What has been your most fascinating writer interview?
I don't know. I really loved Percival Everett. I mean, I think he's so humorous and dry, like it's the satire. I mean, think about it. Oh, fly fishing? I mean, to me, that was incredible. But it's, I also think Julia Alvarez, who wrote Cemetery of Untold Stories. That book is about a woman who goes to the Dominican Republic. She's a writer, and she buries all of her manuscripts. And what's crazy is that she, in the interview, I had no idea, says, oh yeah, one of her most famous books is In the Time of Butterflies, and it's about 3 sisters who were killed under the dictator. She said that manuscript, the characters wouldn't get out of her head, and so she went to their childhood home and buried the manuscript. And we were like, oh my gosh, that's where your idea came from? It's just crazy, right? And I think what is so apparent to me is the enormous creativity of all of these people, how they all have creative rituals, they all have, even nonfiction writers, they still have a ritual to write. But libraries and curiosity and PBS stations, right? Like we'll always get, oh my gosh, Reading Rainbow. Or my gosh, I grew up on this curiosity always comes out, and it inspires me to realize the important job that I have and you have, because that's part of the connecting nature of it.
Absolutely, and part of our mission is early childhood education and literacy, and we do a lot in that space. We're known as Louisiana's Classroom, LPB. I mean, we put out curriculum tied to our programs and our content that teachers use in their classrooms, and we hold special events. We have a website that you can access. with a lot of learning materials, but we've also partnered with Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, and this is huge. This is huge. In 2023, the legislature passed legislation to establish the Imagination Library of Louisiana, and LPB is the administrator. We head up that program, so to speak. So we partner with local community organizations. So I don't know if any of you out there are with a community organization interested in partnering, but the Imagination Library provides free books to children ages 0 to 5, and it's such a great program, and we are so proud to be the administrator of this program, and it's grown tremendously just in the short time that it started. So it's something we're very proud of, and it's one of those very meaningful things that we do in the space of early childhood literacy.
And I know many of you know how important that is, but I also, from someone who, my children actually got books from the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, to get those books at your house and your kid is 2, 3, 4, they're being mailed a book. And the excitement of that book ownership is incredible. And the other thing that many people don't realize, so my kids are bilingual, and when you're raising kids, and it's easier now than it was 16 years ago, but it was really hard to access books in Spanish for young kids. Mm-hmm. They send books in Spanish, which is incredible because it helps. This is a thing, if you live in a Spanish-speaking household, like my son's grandparents don't speak much English, so they wouldn't read to him. But when we had Spanish books, all of a sudden they did. So it was transformational, not only for the grandparent, but the grandchild and their relationship. And that's one of the reasons why I think your partnership for early childhood literacy is so incredible and so important. And I know it is changing lives. The statistics are out there. Households that I think have more than 500 books in their house are more likely to go to college. And we know what college means. It's not the end all of everything, but we know that income, right, is higher for people who are able to go to college. But regardless, it helps with curiosity. And that's what's so important, and literacy, which is critical to a democratic society.
So let's touch on the work that you do with PBS programming and books, and how you marry those two together.
Yeah.
I love that fact that, a lot of people will read a book and then they'll go watch the film of it and they'll be like, or they'll watch the film, which motivates them to read the book. So it's great synergy what you're doing to really amplify the programming that we offer.
Yeah, so one of the really fun things that I get to do is I get to interview filmmakers and writers. So anyone watch Masterpiece? Right, so Masterpiece is often based on books. Right? So that kind of makes some of my job easy, because then except does it, All Creatures Great and Small, right? Obviously James Herriot is no longer with us, but we're still able to interview the screenwriters. So often I get to interview the screenwriters. I'm going to show you a brief little clip to give you an idea. And what you'll see is a lot of Masterpiece is really, it's a lot of mystery, but you get to, and there is Ken Burns. So, right, I've gotten to speak to Ken Burns several times about his documentaries. I think that might have been, that was actually, he wrote a book called Our America. This was from the American Experience. Then Henry Louis Gates, we were talking about the Black Church, but I also interviewed him about the Black Box. Making Black America we also got to speak with him. This is Dayton Duncan, who wrote a book called Blood Memory. And last year, PBS came out with The American Buffalo. The American Experience, they wrote about the Boston busing crisis, which it was really interesting because one of the co-filmmakers is from my hometown, and we experienced something akin to that in our hometown, which is kind of interesting. This is Homecoming, which was, if you think of The American Buffalo as part 1 and part 2, Homecoming is part 3. It brings where the buffalo is and indigenous people are to present day, like kind of a perspective. And so that's super fun to be able to really highlight that. And I skipped over clearly the masterpiece, which I will share quickly.
And then I want you to give us a sneak peek of what's ahead.
I will try. So that is Ben, who wrote All Creatures Great and Small, the first 2, Series 1, Series 2. He is pretty extraordinary, a lot of fun. Ben Vanstone. You know, what becomes interesting is in the case anyone watches Sanditon, right, you can't interview Jane Austen, right? And the book is incomplete. So the creative license that some of the writers get, the screenwriters, they're truly writers. And to be able to get those insights and share it with the public through PBS stations, through libraries, is part of the fun of it for me. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna ask you to give us a sneak peek of some of your author interviews and events and programs that tie together.
I know that in December what we're doing is for the Readers Club is we're doing highlights, right? So we're kind of looking back over the year and really saying these were the best of moments and these are the best authors and best books that we've read this year. And it's fun to be able to share that because in some ways, you know, I learn, as I said, so much when I talk to authors, like Renee Fleming. Does anyone know who Renee Fleming is? She wrote a book called Music and Mind, Harnessing the Arts about health and wellness. And she curated this book, and it's probably 600 pages. And I read the whole thing before the interview. And the first thing she says in the interview was, no one should read this whole book. She was like, this book is meant for you to open it and pick and choose. What's neat is like Ann Patchett has a story in it, or like a writing in it. Yo-Yo Ma, famous choreographers. So it's a real, and it's extraordinary because it's basically showing that music is life-changing. Yes, we know that. I heard wonderful live music last night. But to understand that there are people who can walk or dance even though, or talk, who can't talk, walk, or dance otherwise when they listen to music. Because in the mind, every part of your mind lights up when you're listening to music. Mm-hmm. And these are the things that like I would never know about unless I read a book or watched a show. So that's why we try to bring that to our community. In terms of 2025, what you can expect. So you can certainly expect if there's a big PBS program coming out, we're going to have something that goes along with that. I'm actually not allowed to talk about what's coming so much, but I will also say we work really hard if there's a Heritage Month. Like we're certainly going to interview someone in collaboration with the Association of African American Life and History. We always do a program at least one program in February to launch off the year of our programming that highlights African American authors. And so you can see that in all of our work, we're really aiming to bring a diversity to people, what they know about, because let's be honest, it's hard to get out of your comfort zone of what to read. And so we're trying to introduce people to maybe new genres, new authors, and there's so many new debut authors coming up all the time. And that's part of the fun of my job and the fun of becoming a PBS Books Club member.
So, what would you say about Louisiana authors? What would you say? You've interviewed several
I have.
In your career.
I think this is such a creative culture, mm-hmm. and to me, it is the landscape of Louisiana, the history that this is. As you're walking up this, it's nothing you don't know if you're from Louisiana, but as you walk up the steps, right, Louisiana was a state in 1812. I'm right now from Illinois. I was from Michigan. Like, those are like 1837, 1818, other way around. But yes, you get the idea. It's like, this is an early state. You have lots of amazing history here, and I feel like that history comes through in the authors and the diversity of authors. I also think, and this is once again nothing you don't know, but I think because of Katrina and the impact of weather on Louisiana, you also see, and poverty that has occurred, I think that also brings this element and complexity and dynamic element that is brought out in the artistry and the literary artistry. Music comes through, right? There's just a vibrancy of work that's produced by Louisiana authors.
And we have such a quirky cast of characters. Louisiana has such a strong sense of self.
Yes.
Our identity, we know it, we're proud of it, and we express it in music, food, culture, customs. So Louisiana is a muse to so many. It's so inspirational on so many levels, just when you look at the geography of the state and just the haunting beauty of it all. It's the interesting landscapes and people. So
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think the first time I came to Louisiana, I felt in some ways like I was in a different country because it felt very different. And even how the land, like I went to New Orleans, but we drove, like how the land was almost the marshes, the swamp, right? And the relationship between the landscape and and the land and the people and the history there, that all comes through in the work. And it's incredible. It's incredible to be able to be here.
do you want to talk at all about some of the work in progress in celebration of the nation's 250th anniversary?
I'd love
Are you
to.
able to share some of these details?
I can.
Okay.
So I don't know if any of you know the Institute of Museum and Library Services. They're the biggest, the largest federal funding agency of museums and libraries. What does that mean? That means it's really, really important, because without that, libraries wouldn't get the money they need, and museums wouldn't get the money they need to preserve American culture and to promote information and access, right? So we partnered, PBS Books partnered with IMLS on Visions of America, All Stories, All People, All Places, going along with this thought of amplifying underheard stories. And this is an excerpt of 6 of the 12 episodes we did. And we really, our model often was go to a museum, explore the museum, listen and speak to scholars and authors, and then hear community voices. And so you'll see we went to the Freedom Tower. I didn't know what the Freedom Tower was, right? It is the Ellis Island of the South. And basically during the 1960s, with Fidel Castro taking over, a lot of Cubans were exiled, and they had to flee the country, and they ended up at the Freedom Tower, right? So we explore that and the impact on Florida and hear it from first voices. Or we go to the Wing Luke Museum, which is the only Pan-American Asian American museum in the country. It was actually vandalized 3 weeks after we shot there. And we talked to Wing Luke, who passed away, his sister, and we learned about the amazing culture and vibrancy and how art really helps people to talk about their culture, right? We all know this. Art can help transcend language. It can help bring people together, right? And that's a lot of the goal of this. So I'm going to show you a quick clip to give you an idea.
Hello, everyone. I'm Crosby Kemper, the Director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, and welcome to Visions of America, all stories, all people, all places. You may have never heard of the Institute of Museum and Library Services, but we are the largest federal cultural agency in the country. We believe in the impact of libraries and museums to both preserve our cultural heritage and keep the history of every community in our country alive. This episode, we're in Miami, Florida, to explore the building known as the Ellis Island of the South, Freedom Tower, on the campus of Miami-Dade College.
So I think this whole idea of freedom is a very characteristic aspect of the Cuban exile community.
In this episode, we're in Seattle, Washington, to explore the Wing Luke Museum of the Asian Pacific American Experience here in the heart of the Chinatown International District.
Americans need to focus more on our unique history as a country, and that's why institutions like Wing Luke are so important.
In this episode, we're in Kansas City, Missouri's historic 18th and Vine neighborhood to visit not one, but two museums that chronicle this community's contributions to a pair of uniquely American pastimes, the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum and the American Jazz Museum.
And so while America tried to prevent them from sharing in the joys of her so-called national pastime, it was the American spirit that allowed them to persevere and prevail.
That's going to be really fascinating.
You know, it's so amazing. There are so many stories that exist that we don't really know about, right? And part of the role, I think, of PBS is to help those stories to be heard. One of the things that we're also working on, and it's in the infancy in some ways, but we're working on how can we tell the story of America as we approach the 250th anniversary, but do it by looking through literature and the literary heritage of every state and territory. And so that more to come, but that is something that we're working on with some partners.
Yeah, and I look forward to working on that with you.
And I look forward to working with you on that too.
Great.
Well, this has been extraordinary.
So before we go, any other thoughts that you want to share, a message that you want to get out to PBS viewers about the work that you're doing in the space of literature?
You know, I love PBS. I grew up on PBS. And for me, when I think about the ability to help be a reader advisor and bring books into people's vision that they might not know about, books and authors, and to tie that, because I also believe and know that people learn in different ways. So some people might read the book, some people might listen to the book, and some might be on their tablet, right? But ultimately, if I can bring that subject alive and then tie it to a PBS program so you can delve deeper, or vice versa, right? Maybe you start with a documentary and you want to know more and you don't know where to go. Well, we do book lists all the time. We also often, every month I do a whole spread in Book List Reader, which is many libraries give out, and I can show you what that looks like to keep your eyes open. And I say that to say, my goal is to provide support for the curious person and to really help you all to be able to learn more and question more. And I think for me, PBS Books and every PBS station, especially LPB, is also committed to that work and wants everyone to understand and question and learn, and that's why we're here.
Well said. All right, well, before we go, I am going to give us a shameless plug. LPB was founded in 1975. Guess what that means? Next year, we celebrate 50 years as Louisiana's storyteller. So that means that we are going to be bringing you some new original programming in conjunction with our 50th anniversary. It's something we're very, very proud of. And hopefully we'll be partnering more in the book space as well.
I certainly hope. I think there are so many amazing Louisiana authors, and I look forward to being able to partner with you and figuring out how to showcase more Louisiana authors.
Lovely. Well, before we go, we want to open the floor up to questions. Does anyone have a question for Heather or myself? And Colleen.
No, I will say.
Colleen's asking for some tea.
I know. She's looking for the tea. I've definitely, first of all, I haven't necessarily. I sometimes want to make sure that I don't step into a problem, obviously, but I haven't seen that. I think that there's so much respect of creatives for other creatives, and they want their work to be looked upon fondly. Now, I do sometimes pick up with especially some masterpiece film, right, that like, oh, they wanted to maybe go in a different direction, and they're very diplomatic in how they say it, right? But maybe they had to do, you know, like we wanted to have, you know, I think I asked, there were differences between the book and so this was interesting. We spoke with the author, and it was the author and the film, the screenwriter. And I was like, why was the book, not a Doberman? Why was a dog not a Doberman? Like, to me, a Doberman means something. Okay. And he was like, because we couldn't get a Doberman because we didn't just need one Doberman. We needed multiple trained Dobermans, and it just wasn't feasible. And I was like, oh, right? Like, so little things, and there was also a name change or a whole segment basically like added about the gun. And there was like so we're talking about Marlowe Murder Club, which was actually our book pick, and our book club conversation. I mean, there's so much fun stuff in that interview, because if you read the book and you like watch it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like a lot of like behind the scenes insight into choices. And so that whole like special collection that's in the basement of that mystery house never existed in the book, right? And so how it came about, he talks a little bit about that, but obviously it kind of came out of left field. I interviewed Anthony Horowitz twice, and that is a big favorite of mine with Moonflower Murders and Magpie Murders. And I asked him about Easter eggs, and he said, so if you watch closely, there is a magpie in Moonflower Murders, right? So there are like little things that kind of nods to his other books that are fun.
But did he bring him along? He adapted his own books to screen.
He did, but I think a lot of the masterpiece books, seldom do I find, like often if someone is adapting a book, it's not really a recent book. It's not always the case, but usually they're all like, right, All Creatures Great and Small, and then the detective, Endeavor, right? Like they're all really inspired by books that came out a bit ago. And I do think they often get the blessing of the writer, because politics are politics, right? You want to make everyone happy. And you can't, I mean, we're in this business, you can't make everyone happy. But you know who you want to make happy is the viewer and the reader, so they come back and watch and read more, right? So I love being able to get that angle, and those conversations are really amazing and special. So I encourage you to tune in if you haven't. Great question.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us.
Mason has one more.
Oh, Mason, oh yeah.
Quick again for Heather, you've done a lot of interviews with very famous authors, but I'm curious for you personally, were you most nervous as well?
Wow, that's a personal question. You know, the truth is, I would say some of my nervousness will, like Ken Burns, I would say things people don't know is that to talk to him, I usually have to submit my questions a week ahead of time. And then sometimes they'll be like, that's too many. And it's not that's too many, it's too many for the time slot. How I am is I submit all my questions. I know I'm not going to get to them, but sometimes like I jump around in ideas. So it's not a disrespectful thing. It took me a minute to understand that, right? It was more like practically speaking. But I'm nervous because he's a really big deal and he's an icon. So for me to speak to him, but I think I most enjoy talking to him. If you haven't read or seen Ken Burns' book, Our America, it is extraordinary. It is a coffee table book. You can experience, he picks these from the start of photography in our country to present day. He picks images, and you basically can go through this book like you're in an art gallery. images by themselves, and then the back matter is where it explains the significance and how it ties into his work and why he selected it. It's one of those books that is on my coffee table because I love it so much, and I don't like things on my coffee table. So it's a big deal. But yeah, I would say Ken, and also I would say Henry Louis Gates, right? And that's just, they're movie stars, right? And I think I respect, it's not only them, I respect them so much, and they've been, for our country, such a crucial voice in helping people to understand the history of our nation better, and I just don't want to mess it up, right? So it's like I feel pressure, but both of them, I will say, it's like, it's funny, I get nervous because both of them are so humbling in some, like, they're so generous with their time and so brilliant in their answers and really give so much of themselves. So I feel incredibly fortunate. I mean, a case in point, I interviewed someone about a Zora Neale Hurston compilation, and Henry Louis Gates had been involved in that project, and she was like, oh, I'll see if he can do an intro. And he did an intro. Like, he was like, this is important, Zora Neale Hurston, like, I'll totally like jump on and do an intro. He is just so generous because he knows the importance of helping people to learn the world as a bigger place. Thank you. All right. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for coming, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
All right. As we say in TV time, that's a wrap.